Joe Walker is an expert trainer on the forefront of the field of interpersonal neurobiology with a specialty in presenting on the physiology and treatment of trauma and resilience. She is the founder of Post-Traumatic Growth Somatic Therapy. Her work focuses on supporting other helping professionals to better assist their clients and patients as well as themselves in developing resilience on all levels of life. She does this by using the most cutting-edge principles of neurobiology and post-traumatic growth. And she lives in a beautiful place in wonderful Colorado, down in the Durango, Colorado area, which love that Four Corners area. Please give a warm welcome to Ruby Joe Walker.
Thank you and welcome. Before we even get started, I'd like to take a moment just to express appreciation to you, that I know that you're really one of the groups that is really part of the unsung heroes. I have been working with the Colorado State Moral Distress group, and I'm very aware of a lot of the struggles you've had. So one of the things I'd like to do before we even talk really what resiliency is or how to keep developing it, I'd like you to just take a moment and see if you can turn towards yourself even a little bit and just feel some self-appreciation. Like, this has been a lot. Hopefully we're in the home stretch here, but it's been a lot. And just see if you can take a moment to feel in your body some appreciation for all you've done. Because this has taken commitment, skills, and effort. It has not been easy. And just notice what it's like to take a moment to feel really a part of your own resiliency, that you're here, you're learning, you know, you're still moving forward with everything that's gone on this year. And notice what happens in your body. And just let yourself notice it. If it's easy for you to find, great. If it's a little harder, that's something we'll talk about. So one of the things I'm going to be doing today is really talking about the effect of the pandemic on our interpersonal neurobiology. Because a lot of people, I do therapy and I work with healthcare workers and really all groups of people, and they come in regularly and say, why am I doing this? And I think this will hopefully help you have an understanding and also move into some non-judgment and a little more self-compassion. Because so many of our responses now are really connected to the effect of the pandemic on our nervous systems. And then what I'm going to be doing is I'll talk a little bit and I'll occasionally check in with Peter around questions, so feel free to shoot some questions into the chat. Okay, so what is resiliency? Resiliency is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. You know, I was talking about resiliency before the pandemic, really just from the point of view of we all need to cultivate it. And it's because of how our nervous system works. And I'll be talking more about that. The good news is resiliency can be learned by any of us and improved, as 2/3 of our inner traits are actually learned and they are not genetic. Before, well, let's say one more thing. The pandemic has created conditions of trauma for all of us because our nervous systems are constantly experiencing threat. This is especially true for healthcare workers. And I'm going to be defining this more, but we are a species, and our biology does certain things whenever we feel threat. And I'll keep defining that. But before we go any further, I know you've been doing a lot and going through a lot, so I'd like to take a moment and just lead you into some mindfulness, which is a resiliency skill, and it's also just a way to begin to check in. If it's okay, let your attention go inward. And you might find you close your eyes, you might keep a soft focus, you might just look down. But let yourself just take a moment and really notice how you're doing, both in this moment and just through these times, just letting yourself pay attention to how you're doing now. And you might turn your attention towards your breath, not trying to change it in any way, but just noticing it. Does it tend to be more on the short breathing or shallow? Or are you feeling like you really can breathe more deeply? And notice how it is in your body. Like, feel where your body is making contact with surfaces. If you're sitting, you may or may not have a back on your chair, but you can notice where your back touches if you do, or how it is to not have your back have any contact. Feeling into your hips and legs and noticing how they are. Notice if you're actually really able to kind of really sit, really move into the seat, if you're in relationship to gravity. Notice your arms. They might be touching your body, and just noticing. And then check in again with your breath and just notice how it is now. And we're just noticing without any kind of judgment, without feeling like anything needs to be any different, but simply noticing. And now notice what emotions might be present. And there might be emotions that might be on the edge. They may not be all the way in your awareness, but something that's just there in the background. Notice that too. And even notice how it is to take time to pay attention to you. And then I'm going to say some words, not so much as to convince you, but actually for it to be a little bit like putting a pebble in water, just seeing what ripples out from you. Whatever you are feeling is okay. Whatever you are feeling is okay. And now notice what happens. Do those words go in? Does your body push back a little bit? And just noticing without judgment, whatever the response is inside. And then if it's okay and it goes in even a little, and it might not go in all the way, take a moment to let yourself notice that in your body. This sense of what you're feeling is okay, letting your body just take that in. Just noticing. And then you might check back in with breath again. And then let yourself finish in your own way, bringing yourself back to being present in this room, taking the time you need. So, is there any comments or anything, Peter?
Not at the moment.
Okay. So what I mentioned is, and I just wanted to have you have an experiment in checking in and doing mindfulness, which we'll talk more about. But our biology has a very particular way it responds to threat. And when it does, we create a state, actually a physiological state. What we now know is this physiological state actually creates certain behaviors and emotions, and it affects how we relate. What's really important about this is this goes on a little bit below our awareness, this way that our body assesses threat. So you all have heard of fight, flight, and maybe freeze, but we'll talk more about this because these biological underpinnings, they're actually called neural platforms. What they'll do is they will limit behavioral repertoire. What that means is, depending on our state, there's things we can and cannot do. So, and I'll define these terms more, but when we're in the green zone, which is what's optimum for biology, we're calm and connected, we're settled, grounded, curious, open, compassionate, and able to really be in the present. And then fight, flight, and freeze have their own behaviors and physiology. So this work really comes from a man named Stephen Porges, and it's called the Polyvagal Theory. The theoretical part of it is actually how he connects it to evolution. But he has put a whole new way that we now see the nervous system. So the old way was it's sympathetic, fight, flight, parasympathetic, rest, and digest. The new way is there's actually three different states that occur. And that what was before parasympathetic and rest and digest, the body either slows down using the dorsal vagal nerve, that's the vagal part of polyvagal theory, or the ventral vagal, which is the social engagement. And I'm going to be defining these. Where his work came from was he wrote a paper over 40 years ago now on the role of the vagus nerve in calming the heart. And it was back before email, so he got actually a letter from a perinatalist who said, you know what, slowed down heart is not great for babies and in utero. This is actually a problem. And that led him on to this study. So in polyvagal theory, evolution is the organizing principle to understand the social behavior of mammals. And what that's about is we provide the longest caregiving of any species. A reptile could have a baby, it runs off, and they could run into it and eat it later. That doesn't actually happen with humans. We are the caregivers for a long time for for all of mammals. Another piece of this theory is the three phylogenetically ordered hierarchical systems are ways mammals respond to safety, danger, and life threat. Now that's a mouthful, and what he's actually talking about is the idea of the three phylogenetically ordered systems are about how it connects to evolution. And then how this all happens is something called neuroception. And neuroception is an evaluative body process of safety, danger, or life threat, and it will trigger these adaptive neural circuits. So neuroception is something that's happening constantly. So even in this kind of a venue where I'm on a computer, some of your nervous systems might have felt, yeah, she seems okay, it feels safe. And then maybe I said something that didn't quite make sense, and it's like, I don't know. It's like, no, okay, all right. So our bodies are doing this constantly. So if you were in a room with people, your whole biology would be moment to moment assessing. That's our neuroception. And it's a body process. And we cannot cognitively intervene on that. Now, I will say neuroception can also get affected by early childhood abuse, meaning that people can overview danger and find danger places that isn't necessarily, or they don't actually assess danger very well because they were living in abuse and it kind of goes offline. Okay, so this vagus nerve, you can see what we actually know is that these two parts of the vagus nerve are actually physiologically different. The ventral vagal is myelinated with a fatty sheath that makes it move quickly, so we can quickly turn on ventral vagal. And the dorsal vagal is from the heart on down. It's the subdiaphragmatic organs. Ventral vagal is heart on up. So the heart then gets slowed in these two ways. One creates health, growth, and restoration, and the other is shutdown. That's why when people go through a lot of stress, they're generally going to have digestive and gut issues. And if there's been a lot of it, this will be more of an ongoing issue. Okay, so in looking at this life thread, back before fish had jawbones, whatever, a million or billion years ago, what they did is to stay safe, what they did is just get still. So this is still deep in our evolutionary biology. and that you'll notice that sometimes something happens and you just freeze. This is not a cognitive response again, this is biology responding. And so if our nervous system assesses life threat, and it is our nervous system's assessment, we're not deciding here, we'll do a freeze. If we assess danger, it's a sympathetic or fight or flight. This is, kind of think of the lizards that just run or fight or whatever. There's not any relationships there. And if our nervous system assesses safety, then the ventral part of the vagus nerve is turned on and we're available for social engagement. So let's look at then what these physiological states create emotionally. So we kind of went through the social engagement section, what happens when we have that available to us. When we're moving into fight-flight, our bodies are actually mobilized. So the body is ready to take action. So as soon as we hit frustration, we're actually moving into our fight response. When we hit worry and concern, we're starting to move into our flight. And that is because our body has assessed danger. Now, obviously, I'm having all kinds of people come in who have anger issues, who are having anxiety issues, and who are having shutdown issues. There's just not one to do anything. All of this is about physiological state. It is not about people's coping. It is not about inner strength. It is about biology. So if there's one thing you remember from this training, that's what I hope it is, that our responses right now are so much more about a biological response and how our body is assessing danger when we have been in real threat. And of course, all of this has been compounded by, we've had poor leadership, we have had mixed messages, we have had, fights about the mask. All of this just amps up the nervous system. And then people that we want to get close to, we really don't get connected to calm our bodies, which is really what the social engagement is for. That we developed this ventral vagal as a way to be close in connection. We stay with our young. They're nursed. They're taken care of. We hold them. So, so going into then the freeze, you see the nervous system assessment also is I can't. So we immobilize at this point. So helplessness, raised pain threshold, which is a great thing because it's like if you picture a deer being chased by a mountain lion, at one point it falls over in the field. That's the freeze response. This raised pain threshold, there's an anesthesia effect in the body. So what happens then is if it would get eaten, it wouldn't actually feel the pain, which is obviously a benefit. And then the other piece is that stillness, oftentimes for animals in the wild, other prey animals or predators will not come after it because of it's just laying there. They think it might be old meat. So going up, depression, numbness, dissociation, shame, shutdown, hopelessness, preparation for death, and trapped. So one of the things that happens to us humans is it's different than the deer. We actually get up and keep trying to function. So the deer in the field gets to complete its freeze response. If you've ever seen a video of it, you'll see that it will shake for a little bit and then it'll get up and it'll go back to the herd. We don't do that. We just get up and start functioning. So some of us start living then in this functional freeze simply because of what we've been going through. So I'm going to fill out this a little bit more and then I'll take some questions about this. So in reviewing then, the ventral vagal complex includes above the heart, the facial muscles, striated muscles in the neck, middle ear, eyes, mouth, larynx, and pharynx. It's connected to the social engagement system. This is how we connect. We turn our head, we turn towards, we look at. All of this is about connection. The sympathetic branch is all the organs and musculature that are connected to effort and doing, preparing, and mobilizing for action. This is fight-flight. This is a mobilization and action state. So one of the things you see a lot when people are in threat is they're going to have more body aches because the body has actually tensed to do something. It really wants to do something, and it's, you know, it doesn't really get to do it. Like you don't get to, you know, run from the job when it's really hard. You might want to. You don't get to yell at people and fight with them when they're being highly unreasonable. And although sometimes that is happening, but so many times that gets inhibited in the situations we're in. And so you don't really see animals in the wild develop PTSD, but humans do because we prepare to do things that we don't really get to finish doing. And that stays lodged in the body. So this is some of the fight or flight behaviors that you might be seeing in yourself that it really feels important to just get, this is what humans do, this is normal. So you might find yourself more anxious or frustrated most of the time, overreacting to situations, getting angry and irritated easily, maybe not feeling like you can rest, more judgmental towards self and others, feeling like one wants to get away, and having more addictive behavior. And this is where we need to bring a lot of compassion to addictive behavior. I mean, you heard from the outset there was a big increase in alcohol sales when the pandemic had been going on for a couple months. A lot of people are talking about pandemic weight gain. This is what humans do to actually shift state. So if we are in yellow and red, we don't actually like it as humans. So we're going to do something that's about, can I just change my state? Hopefully we're going to talk about things that are a little more helpful. So every time we're defensive and judgmental actually, or we feel judged, our body moves into this mobilization state. It actually is just an automatic thing. So this dorsal vagal complex is below the heart and into the gut, the subdiaphragmatic organs. It's the most ancient system also found in other species and is connected to our freeze. This is deep conservation. So occasionally you'll hear a story about a child who falls through a frozen lake. And one of the things you see is they may be down there for some hours. I think the max is maybe 12 or 13 hours, and they come out and they're okay. That's because the body has gone into deep conservation. That conservation then becomes actually life-saving. So the physiology associated with it is shut down in the body. So what are the freezy behaviors? More on the depressed side, lethargy and tiredness, less active, hard to feel motivated for anything, procrastination, lots of putting things off. It can be hard to interact with others. It'll just feel too exhausting. Having more memory issues and feeling chronically overwhelmed. And again, let's just take a moment to really get, this is biology responding. This is what humans do. These threats that we've had are very real. And this is what happens. Very hard to get ourselves to do things. So one of the things is breath dysregulation is part of both the threat states. So learning to work with breath can actually help shift state, and it can move us more into the green zone. Before we do this breath exercise, I'd like to just check in and see if there's any questions.
Let's take a look. Not a lot of questions, but I think that last slide, actually, if you go back a couple of slides, so that freeze behaviors, and I typed it in the chat, but I was just curious because I just hearing conversations with, and I'm not a caregiver, I work in a senior care, but I've listened to conversations from these folks, you know, over the last, you know, year and a half, and this is what they sound like.
That's right.
This slide right here is what they sound like right now.
Yeah. Well, we're picking this up on the moral distress group too. So I'm working with physicians and social workers kind of throughout the state, and just even resigned. So even being just resigned of this is the way that it is. And this simulation for how long this thing has gone on. So we're simply not designed to not be in connection, not live with our people, not to be doing things socially. Even if you tend to be an introvert, there's something about you don't get to that really has created this. And for a lot of healthcare workers, particularly nursing home and assisted living, there's so many times in the dilemma of what they're doing actually feels bad. So when our biology has competing impulses, like I really can't let these people visit, and oh my gosh, I hate it that my patient isn't getting visitors, that creates more freeze. And so the competing impulses in biology will be a big piece of getting freeze. So I'm not surprised that's so much of what you're seeing.
Well, and here's part of the thing, right? This right now for our audience is about you guys, focusing on you. But you guys are caregivers, and the first thing you're asking is, well, how can I use this for our residents and staff? This isn't about your residents and staff right now. Can we take a minute and think about you and what you're dealing with and what you're going through? Because when we overlook this stuff, and now like you want to be a better caregiver, you have to take care of yourself too. And so that's part of what we're trying to do here. So obviously you guys are caregivers, you love people, you wouldn't be in this industry, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. But you also have to take a minute and look at this, because so where she's going, and I've seen this in other things, is going to be really super helpful to you guys. I just know this. So I'm emphasizing it for you right now. So anyway, back to you, Ruby Jo.
Well, first, thank you so much for saying that and interrupting that. And I'm also so appreciative that you're underlining this is about you. And so what we're really trying to do is attend to you. You have not been attended to. You have been the caregiver. Being a caregiver has always been hard. There's been nothing like it in our history with how it has been to be a caregiver. It takes a special kind of heart. It takes a special kind of person to already do what you do. So one of the things I'm hoping is if you see yourself here, I really want you to just continue to bring just some compassion, which I actually will talk about a little bit later, that it's actually hard to be human, and this is what humans do. So we're all here, and you have been hit particularly hard. So I'm so in with Peter, and I have such an appreciation that you want to help your patients, but the real deal is this is about you. Like we'll do another training at some point to help your patients. This is really about you and how you need attending to. And because one of the things I say a lot in the moral distress group, I just say, hey guys, humans are not designed to be in this level of override for this much time. It's supposed to be very short. If we do override, which is what you're doing, you have to keep going no matter what's going on inside. We're designed to do it for very short periods of time. The pandemic has really thrown it into something even bigger because the level of override for all of these months and months and months, over a year, is actually really tough on our nervous systems. Now, the good news is, I'm going to teach you resilience stuff, and that resiliency practices actually can make a difference. We can start working with our state. Any other questions or thoughts, Peter, before I move on?
There's one, I think we can get to that a little bit. I think what I'm seeing is that they're kind of going, okay, what do we do?
Yeah, okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Hang on, guys. We'll get there. Let's do breath right now. So this breath exercise, I've had more success teaching clients, groups, because it takes 11 seconds. And it kicks in the parasympathetic, and you can do it in a conversation. I could actually do it right here, and you wouldn't necessarily know it. You can do it. You can be with a client and do it, or a patient. You can be in a meeting. You can do it anytime. So I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, and then I'll lead you through it. I'm going to first have you just blow out your air, just a, and then I'm going to have you inhale for 3, and I'll count, hold for 3, and then out for 5. And I'm going to do it 2 times. So, okay, let's first just blow out your air. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, hold, 1, 2, 3, out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, hold, 1, 2, 3, out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now just take a moment and notice your body. And I'm wondering what kinds of things you're noticing and if you can feel a shift in state. Is there any comments, Peter? Is anybody able to? I can only see your picture. I don't see any faces.
I know. Well, I did it, so I definitely did. So yeah, just looking for comments, folks that just did that. Let us know. Was there a shift? What'd you feel? Don't be shy.
Yeah, or be shy. Like if you don't want to answer, like that's okay too.
So someone just said their shoulders immediately relaxed and lowered.
Yes, that's what you're going to find. So what I would say is do this chronic all through the day. What we now know about resilience practices is it's little and often. It takes 10 to 20 seconds, this is 11, to turn off the amygdala, which is the smoke detector in the brain. And so if we're trying to do brain change, it's little and often. And so everybody has 200 seconds a day, 10 to 20 seconds, 10 times a day. Everybody has that, 100 to 200. So I would encourage you to do this all through your day, whenever you think about it. I have people who set a little timer on their watch so they remember to do it. I have people who put little sticky note places, but it's really important because this will bring you to the green zone. What happens in terms of neural pathways is that accumulates and you simply then move more easily into the green state. So this chart, I'm not going to go too much into it, but this goes into all of the physiology, and I can send Peter the handouts if people want this, but this really goes into what goes on in the physiology. And so in terms of when we're in green, yellow, and red. But green is when we have optimum health. That's where health, growth, and restoration happens. Okay, another way to see this is trauma state. When we get into, instead, life is supposed to always be something new. When we're more in trauma state, moral distress, grief, any of those kinds of things, we have the same thoughts, emotions, and sensations. It's literally a vortex. We have constriction and limits in our experience. We struggle with being present, and neutral and positive experiences are not integrated. So that's the big one there. So when we're in this state, we actually don't notice what's okay. And this is because of our negativity bias. And so what happens is we are less of ourselves because we're in the vortex. So what is a negativity bias? This is a real thing, and again, this is biological. This doesn't mean you're a negative thinker. There's something wrong with you. This is what we do as humans. We would always rather think that stick on the ground is a snake just to be sure. And so our biology reacts like that. So what this means is we're in what is wrong thinking. Like as we're looking around the world, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? When we have negative, we overfocus on it. We remember it more. It actually gets more embedded in our memory, and we do not see the big picture because of this. So what this means then is, and this is that's almost counterintuitive in some ways about resiliency practices, is they have to be intentional. Because of our physiological state, the whole red, green, yellow thing, and because of this negativity bias, what it means is we have to get intentional about where we put our attention. Rick Hansen is a big writer in all of this resilient stuff and in brain science, and he talks about the brain as Velcro for negative and Teflon for positive, and this is because of that negativity bias. We've all had this experience. You maybe get a new haircut. You know, you have 10 people say, oh, I like your hair. And then you have one person say, oh, you cut your hair. That's what you remember. And again, that's biology. So if we're going to integrate resiliency, if we're going to really shift it, it means then we need to do things like taking support from others. We need to take in the good. And that's actually a Rick Hansen phrase, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. Mindfulness and self-compassion, and we need to change our physical state. Breath work, body work, and exercise are ways to do that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about these. So for us to be okay, we really need more positive than negative. So if that's not happening in life, we can give it to ourselves and it will create some of the same thing. So to be flourishing, we need 3, 4, 5 to 1. We're going to feel stuck if it's even 2 positives to 1 negative, and we're going to be depressed if it's less than 1 to 1. Again, what this means is we have to be aware of where we're putting our attention, because we are ongoingly sculpting our nervous system moment to moment, always with where we put our attention. So I'll feel myself like moving into something negative, and then it will be, okay, like, can I look at the big picture here? Or what else is happening that I'm not taking in? Just because the job is to shift state. So we all need to learn to take in the good for our own resiliency. Taking in the good can be awe, the beautiful Colorado mountains, the trees. It can be gratitude, generally human kindnesses, or just everyday positive experiences. So what I'd like to do now is take a moment and have you just bring up something small that happened in the last 2 days that you didn't take in. Maybe somebody was just kind. Maybe the barista where you went and got coffee remembered your name. Maybe someone gave you a compliment that you said, yeah, that you didn't take in. Maybe one of your kids really did, their homework and you didn't have to be involved. Let yourself take a moment to just feel that. Any kind of goodness. And now notice what happens in your body as you stay with this sense of taking in the good. Notice what softens. And your system might go to, but this didn't happen. Kind of corral yourself back, move back into just savoring what was good. Notice if your breath shifts. And I'm wondering, what do you notice? Is there anybody who feels shift in their body when you try this?
We'll see if they comment. I would say for me, things that I think about like that, actually, it's like a spark of energy.
Yeah. Nice. It like enlivens you a little.
Yep.
Right. So that's actually still, you actually get a little more present then, right? So that's a type of being present. Yeah. So this is something that I'm going to encourage you to be looking at daily and to really get, we don't do this. Your patient says, thank you so much, and you just hurry on. You don't really take in, you made a difference in their life. Like, this is something they couldn't do. They needed the help with this. This was supportive. And so this taking in the good is a really important thing because of how we're biologically wired. So self-compassion is also something that we now know buffers stress and increases resilience and self-worth. It moves us out of evaluation, which leads to less fight-flight. So that means it moves us out of the yellow zone, but it also helps us not be in the red zone. What is it? It's being warm and understanding to ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than ignoring our pain or being self-critical. So when we get an internal threat to our self-concept, when we freeze, we ruminate. That's when we just spin. That's the internal threat. We just spin about it. We think. One of the things I'm having people do is do the 3-3-5 breath and move into the body. When you have this rumination, you're no longer in body. You aren't even in present moment. So the real deal is, that this will create this state. We want to shift the state. When the internal threat to self-concept is more fight, we're going to be in self-judgment. We're just going to be criticizing ourselves. And when it's flight, we'll move into isolation, mindless activities, just checking the phone, being on the game, whatever. So using self-compassion actually can help all of these states, and helps us be present with ourselves and others. It really teaches us to be an inner ally rather than an inner enemy, and this supports resilience. So one of the things that's going on right now is we're actually, as a culture, a little less skillful right now. And so it's so important I'm working with parents and, who are going, oh my gosh, I'm yelling at my kid. I hate doing this schoolwork and I just wish they'd go back to school. And boy, I'm mad at my spouse about this and my partner's doing this. And all of this is because our nervous system is amped up. So what we want to do is just keep bringing in self-compassion. That's going to be a much better teacher of changing our behavior than being critical. So it's hard for many of us. There's feelings of unworthiness. We feel like we're not enough. We might be critical, or we might have early beliefs from childhood that can affect it. They are the reason to do self-compassion. Self-compassion is coming out as a big change agent in neurobiology, and it's coming out as both prevention and treatment. I like this quote. Dr. Kristen Neff is a self-compassion researcher, and she says, I found in my research that the biggest reason people aren't more self-compassionate is they're afraid they'll be more self-indulgent. They believe that self-criticism will keep them more in line. People have gotten it wrong because our culture says being hard on yourself is the way to be. And it's just so important to really get that this is going to be supportive and helpful. It isn't going to make you soft and easy on yourself. You might be kind though, which we want that. So there's 3 parts to self-compassion: mindfulness, which is awareness of our suffering; connection to common humanity, to get this is the human experience; and self-kindness, talking to ourselves like we would a friend. So mindfulness, and I did this with you at the beginning, is holding anything in our awareness where self-compassion is specifically focused in on our suffering. Dan Siegel talks about the term name it to tame it. And so just even like, I don't know what happened to you at the beginning when we did the mindfulness, but sometimes just noticing, oh, I'm feeling really angry, I feel really edgy. What that can do is that labeling can turn off the amygdala. So the amygdala is that smoke detector in the brain, and when it's off, we can be in the green zone. So self-compassion can help us accept ourselves in the situation as it is right now. And it helps us also be less identified with the struggle. So whatever the struggle is right now. So many times when we're in our struggle, it's just all there is, and it becomes our identity. But if we just say, this is how I'm feeling, it's not all of us, and offering kindness to us, we can actually then begin to see it isn't the whole picture of us, even if we haven't been skillful. So before we go there, I'd like to take a moment and have you bring up something that you regret. Not the worst thing in your life, but something that you just, when you think of it, you feel just, oh, I wish I hadn't have done that. I was edgy with this person and grumpy with my kid, or I yelled at this person, or, cut off somebody in traffic. Just think of something that was not your best version of yourself. And then notice how that feels in your body. And even notice that it's a type of suffering, like you don't feel good. And now, if it's okay, I'd like you to put your hand on your heart. And as you put your hand on your heart, let yourself bring some kindness. Let yourself be reminded in this moment of just the suffering that's going on and how you were likely in one of those green and yellow states. Actually, I know you were, because that's when we do that. And let yourself just feel just you're doing the best you can. And not in this way that you're trying to say, oh, I'm not responsible, but just in this way that it's true. And just give yourself kindness. And let yourself just even say, it's okay. Be with you the way you would be with a dear friend or somebody important to you. It's okay. And let your hand on your heart be a real reminder of the kindness. And feel that. And notice as you feel this kindness towards yourself, how your body is now. Yourself just notice.
See if we get some comments.
Yeah. You just check in. It's nice to know how this was to try.
Someone said like a weight has been lifted.
Yes. Yes.
I think too a little bit like a clearing, like a space is created.
That's right. That's right. And I'm going to back up a little bit because I want to just kind of remind you of something that I said, but we'll do it here. So I want you to think now of just your human experience. And I'd like you to think back on a time right now when you felt like you were your best self. Like you really took the time to find out how somebody really was, or you were just kind. You just did a little extra. And I want you to see you were in the green zone. Mm-hmm. Your body was there. And when you think of this less skillful moment where you were less grateful, you cut somebody off in traffic, you were rude, you flipped them off, whatever you did, let yourself feel you were in the yellow and red. And just underlining, these are physiological states that limit behavioral repertoire. They influence us greatly. Any comments on that?
Nothing yet.
Okay. Right. So a moment of self-compassion can change your entire day. A string of such moments can change the course of your life. Chris Germer is another self-compassion researcher. Our field is really turning to this because of how big it is in creating change. When you are compassionate with yourself, you trust in your soul, which you let guide your life. Your soul knows the geography of your destiny better than you do. So this is a bunch of free resources on self-compassion that I can send this on to Peter if you guys are interested.
Yeah, make sure you send it over because we'll send this out to everybody.
Yeah, so I want to just go over our resilience skills summary. So the things to be playing with: taking in the good, 33-5 breaths, mindfulness, which is that name it to tame it, just starting to notice what's happening, a little bit like we did at the beginning, and self-compassion. These practices support the green zone in the nervous system. So one of the things is you're going to recognize yourself in the yellow or red. Most of us have been, having a lot of yellow and red during this time, like it's work to get to the green. So one of the things is to keep remembering that if you're in the red zone, small resilience practices are critical. That's 10 to 20 seconds, 10 times per day. Any of those things that I just showed you. Gratitude could be on there. Anything that actually shifts physiological state. The other thing is it's actually a time to drop what doesn't serve you. People, activities, social media, information, anything that doesn't serve you, gotta let it drop. This is not a state of very high doing. Remembering the physiology of the deer in the field, doing less is better. And I encourage people to also just let yourself binge out on the Netflix. Let yourself actually just, slow down. Don't feel guilty. When we're in the yellow, doing self-care practices of mindfulness, eating right, exercising, boundary setting, resiliency practices are needed daily. And if you get to the green zone, you want to pay close attention to your state and stay mindful of how you're doing. Now, I want to just underline again that yellow and red, we want to move into addictions. It's a thing to not be critical of, but to also get that has consequences. So we want to be trying to do these other things that help calm the body rather than just using food, alcohol, pot, whatever to regulate. This is, I don't know why I'm not able to go forward now. Oh, well, there we go. I want to just let you know, this is some free resources again. The resilience page on the resources for Colorado healthcare workers actually has a lot of stuff. A lot of the stuff I've covered, I actually did the resilience page and have audio and videos on there for resilient skills that you can listen to if you're a person that would help you. And they're only 2 to 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm not going the right way. Okay. The stress of these times is creating trauma response in all of us. It's important to see our responses as human. What this means is do not judge. Try to be as kind as you can, and to really you're one of the hardest hit populations. Your physiology has been through way more, everybody's has, and yours has been through more. You've kind of got the double whammy going. Cultivating our own resiliency is important to stay skillful and feeling good, or even keeping the status quo. Taking in the good, breath exercises, and self-compassion can shift our state and build resiliency. And you could see that as we did these, your shoulders came down, breath increased, and there may be some that work better for you and that don't work as well. So stick with what works, but to begin to employ them. For resiliency practices, it's best to do little and often. The brain, neuroplasticity-wise, 10 to 20 seconds, 10 times a day. So I have, any questions?
All right, guys, what questions have you got? A couple of thoughts I had. Some of this that I've looked at from a guy named Jim Wilder, a book called Rare Leadership. And one of the areas he emphasizes, which is, you kind of talked about it as social, but on the slide, it talks about your community. And
that's right.
When we're really operating, in our normal, we're in community with others. So these are people that we can go, oh, this is what it's like to be us. And this is what it's like us to be together. And this is what we do together. Yeah. And having that community, which again, part of the challenge we've had is such isolation and being apart. And so, part of what our board is trying to do with this community is like, we need to be in community together around this, in that we're sharing in this experience together, and providing, this kind of support. And these are actual exercises that we can do to help us do that. And then the other thing that I thought was, and you specifically talked about it, thinking about the good, but it's that gratefulness, appreciation piece, and making that a piece of the practice. That, so you're breathing, and then you're taking moments to go, oh wait, there's some good things. Yeah, let's think about those for a minute, to reset the brain, because the brain gets in such a mode and it just does what it does. Like, that's what it's made for. And so we have to do a practice to reset it.
That's right. Well, you're really talking about, first of all, like the second point, the automaticity that happens in the brain. And so we make things automatic, and we can move into automatic just to be efficient. That's just the brain trying to do efficiency. But you're right. It's like getting more aware and more present will help with that. And then to your other point, going back to, you're really right on in getting, I didn't talk about it as much in this training, but we are actually herd animals. We're tribal.
Yes.
So we need this. That's one of the things that got affected in the pandemic, is we couldn't be in connection in the way that our biology likes. We like to be close. We want to hug. We want to be in more connection. And the pandemic created limits in that. Boy, you have to stay 6 feet away, and then you can't really even see their smile. So all of that has had an effect. So I appreciate you underlining that, because I do talk about that sometimes in different groups. Yeah. I'm going to read you something kind of in closing.
Okay.
A poem I just found today, actually, that someone sent to me. It's called When This Is Over. When this over, may we never again take for granted a handshake with a stranger, full shelves at the store, conversations with neighbors, a crowded theater, Friday night out, the taste of reunion, a routine checkup, the school rush each morning, coffee with a friend, the stadium roaring, each deep breath, a boring Tuesday, life itself. When this ends, may we find that we have become more like the people we want to be, we were called to be, we hope to be, and may we stay that way, better for each other because of the worst.
Mary Jo, thank you. I'm sure everybody, I'm not in the same room with these folks, but for me personally, this was such a great reminder, and so grateful for it. I know everybody that was on here was grateful for it. I'm excited to get this recording out and share with folks. I think it's, regardless of who came to the conference and paid for the conference, I think all of our members need to take some time and go through this and see this. So just folks are saying how much they appreciate the presentation and that last poem as well, and all that. So if there's any other questions, thoughts, add them to the chat there.
Well, and I just want to say again, thank you for all you have been doing and your dedication and sticking with it during all this time. And, just that you probably aren't hearing enough how appreciated you are, but you are appreciated. So thank you for all you do, all of you.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you, Mary Jo. Appreciate it. Great.